Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you, Julie and Pat, for coming and sitting with me to be able to hear some of these wonderful stories that we are blessed with that we find in the Gospels. So you weren't here for the preceding weeks, but we're going over the life of Jesus, and particularly after the Sermon on the Mount. He has 16 different stories or life events that happen that witness to his character and nature and the revealing of God incarnate and what it would look like to live a sinless life here on earth, but also of Jesus' authority of who he was as the Son of God. So there are many different views of who Jesus was. It is not deniable that he was a person that lived on earth. Some people think he was a great teacher. But if he's just a teacher and claims to be the Son of God, and he's not the Son of God, then he's a liar, which would make him not a good teacher. Some people think that he's a lunatic, that he just was hallucinating and was seeing these things. We know him as Jesus Christ, the risen Lord, the Son of God. So some of the preceding stories that we've told began with the centurion servant, which the centurion was a Roman soldier, a man of authority that had men serving underneath him, and he told Jesus that. He said, I too have those that if I say go, they go, and I say they come, they come. And he says, I have a servant that's sick, and he needs to be made well. And Jesus said he would go to his house, and the guy said, you can't come to my house. Like, I can't, I'm not worthy. But just say the word, and he'll be healed. That just gave me chills, because Jesus says, not even in all of Israel have I seen somebody with faith like this. Then the next story we go into is when the disciples, the ones that were as close to Jesus as any of the other ones were, and have seen these things, were in the boat with him, thinking that the wind and the waves were going to be their demise and that they were going to perish because the storm was so great. It was causing them great terror. Well, they woke Jesus, panicking, saying, save us, Master, so we don't perish. And he says, you have little faith. He says, have faith, and calms the wind and the waves. And they were astonished, saying, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. So then this comes into the story that we have in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28, begins. And it says, when he came to the other side of the country of the Gadarenes, 2 men who were demon-possessed met him as they were coming out of the tombs. Now they were so extremely violent that people couldn't pass along the way. And they cried out, saying, what business do we have, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? And they cried out, and now there was a herd of swine feeding at a distance from them. And the demons began to entreat him, saying, if you are going to cast us out, cast us into the herd of swine. And he said to them, go. And they came out and went into the swine. And the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and perished in the water. Now the herdsmen ran away and went to the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demoniacs. And behold, the whole city came out and met Jesus, and when they saw him, they implored him to leave their region. Now, when you hear stories like this, and this one in particular, I picked up on a couple new things just now as I was reading it. I like to begin by just kind of talking about who were some of the characters in the story.
Demon-possessed.
The demon-possessed men, those were 2 of the main ones. Jesus was another character.
The disciples.
The disciples would have been there, yeah. The herdsmen. And then the people that the herdsmen went and got. It came back. Yeah, the whole city came out to meet him, and they ran him off. So when you hear stories like this, and this one was unique, it was not just such a clear message, right? What is something like a teaching that one could use to obey, or think, hey, like, oh man, there's a command for me to do here? What I was thinking is like casting out demons. would be one. If you see somebody that is demonically possessed and coming and telling it to go in the name of Jesus Christ is something that we have, but only by and through his authority. But then also not necessarily caring more about the herdman's property than we care about the people that need to be set free from the demonic spirits. Because that was one thing that Jesus didn't care about, right? By casting the demons into the swine and the swine drowned, it cost these men a lot of money. So he was like, I need to not hurt their property, right? He did what he had to do.
Do you think Jews ate pork?
It's not. They might not have even been there for food, right? So some of them use it for money and things. That's a really good point. Actually, I'm glad you said that because now it gives me something to think about. And it doesn't. They might not have been Jewish herdsmen.
Okay.
Well, because it does say in the gatherings, but that's a really good point that you pointed that out. I'm going to look into that because that's interesting. So what is something that the demoniacs pointed out right at the beginning?
They were talking to the Son of God.
That's what was astounding to me.
Yeah, they knew.
They knew. And they knew that there was a time that he was going to have the victory. Because they said, did you come here to torment us before the time? So, and another thing that I like to ask is like, who are some people in your lives that you could tell this story to? Or do you think that this is a story that you would tell to somebody to try to win them over with, or not win them over, but to show them Jesus?
I don't know, I know a lot of people in my life that, like my son's oldest, he believed in Thor, and Zeus and stuff like that. But there's, I don't know.
I've met several people recently that would confess that.
There's a couple of people I could probably bring it up to, but there ain't a lot.
Yeah.
You can bring it up to them, but it's going to be a choice of whether or not they're going to want to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people do and will change.
Yeah, and this is a story that's unique. Like, you're not just going to enter with this story. You have to have the right context.
Right.
If you are, in an unreached people group culture and they've got swine or they've got sheep or something, and you could say this story and say, hey, there was this teacher one time that did this thing, and how would that make you feel if they ran in there? Look at what they did after.
Right.
Instead of being happy that these two men were set free, they ran them out of the city. It's a unique thing. It's not really the way that we would think. We would think, yes, he saved the people. Ooh, celebrate, forget the swine. It was not like that for him. They thought he was doing it by some other authority. So when you hear these kind of stories, it's a interesting place to be, especially when you're a Bible story and telling these kind of stories, trying to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ and telling these stories, because they're so counterculture to where we're at. I don't know if y'all know anybody with herds of swine.
No.
I don't know if you've met two demoniacs that you can't pass by their way, so violent that nobody would cross. You might could find them. You would have to look pretty hard.
I met a few in prison, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely this. It's not like it doesn't exist. But what is the most telling thing about this story that you personally take away about Jesus?
Just the fact that the demons knew who he was before he even spoke.
Yeah.
It says, I mean, he's got to be somebody for them to know that he's the Son of God. He's got to be something.
Without him saying a word.
Without saying a word. The demons knew exactly who he was.
Yeah. Did you say the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did he do to get the demons to flee?
Just commanded it.
All he said was go. Go.
And the pigs kept on going.
Yes.
And the pigs kept on
I wonder,
dead.
I've always wondered what happens to the spirit after the swines die, like the demonic spirit.
Right.
do they then go and find someone, or is that the end of it? Because then it's like, I don't know, that's an interesting thing. Is that what a, because why would they want to go on the swine? Would it be to continue on? Right? Then why did they run into the water? So it's a unique thing. It's like, was that the end, or were they just then cast into another place?
Pigs don't have souls, do they?
Well, and that's why it's unique. Why would they want to
Right.
be cast into the swine? So it's just something to be thinking about. What was one thing that you didn't like about this story?
Maybe the part where they run them out of town
Yeah.
for not trying to spread something that nobody really believed in.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to believe in it, so they run them out of town.
Well, yes, and you could, yes, they were not wanting to acknowledge Jesus' authority, but
they're not from that town. But
Jesus and them were not.
no, the people who run them out weren't from that town.
I think they were, but
They were.
yeah, they were. They were upset because of the amount of money he just cost them.
Right.
And yeah, they were like, all I see is what happened. Like, and unfortunately, and this is what I don't like about it, that means they valued the lives of the swine more than they valued the lives of the people.
Yeah.
And it kind of paints the picture of the world that Jesus entered into. And before Christ, you don't have humanitarian aid. You don't even have these nonprofit charitable organizations
Right.
helping people, even apart from the name of Jesus. Still today, it's all credited to Christ, because before him, the blind just laid on the street and begged.
Right.
The demoniacs just stayed and people didn't mess with them. The lepers were thrown out of the camp, and that's where they were left to stay. But then Jesus came. Thank you guys for listening, and I look forward to continue doing this with
That
y'all.
was good.
It was so good. Thank you guys.
That was good.